y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Finding Closure. We hope that you are all well and safe out there in TV land. I'm Juliana.
I'm Barbara.
And again, we want to thank everyone for all your support and kind words as we've begun this journey and this adventure and this project. Your kind words or your likes and subscribes have meant a lot to us and have given us support and encouragement. Has also been a bonus for us too, and we appreciate it. So, again, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Click the little subscribe button down there to help us grow our channel and to be able to continue to bring the stories of the lost your way. And it helps us and it encourages us and inspires us. And again, if you have any stories you like for us to take a look at or look that you may know in your area, because sometimes depending on where you live in this country in particular, some things may have happened or some cases that might not be as well known, in our neck of the area or neck part of our country might be more popular in your neck of the country. So send them this way. Any cases you want us to take a look at, we'll be happy to take a look at them. And who knows, maybe on the next one, it might be one that you submitted. Again, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, help us grow our channel and everything. And if you have any other stories that you want us to do, please let us know. Please put them in the comments below. And when you're commenting what story or that you want us to do or look at, please let us know if it's okay for us to be able to use your handle or name in an upcoming episode that you presented to us. Again, please don't forget to subscribe to the little thing down there. Help us grow, and it will help us to be able to continue to bring our stories and the stories of the lost to you. So, which brings us to this week's case. We all have these little devices that we carry with us everywhere we go, our cell phones, tablets, computers, laptops, things like that. And you can't really see it, but on here is what's called an Amber Alert. And we get these lovely alerts not every day, but, we get them and a lot of us ignore them, or we, kind of look the other way. We don't really pay attention to them. We know what they're for, obviously, which is for letting us know about an abducted child somewhere like in our region or in our country. And, it pops up an alert like very much like this on her phone. They're a little bit different depending on your phone. Mine on my phone, which is an iPhone, is a little bit bigger, and it has just a little bit more detail than what hers is. This is actually her phone. But we don't, therefore, it's basically alerting us about the make, model, and the child of the person who abducted a child. And again, a lot of us ignore them or look the other way, and we know what they're for, but a lot of people don't know that behind this alert, there was a little girl named Amber, and this is her story that we're going to be bringing to you today and her legacy. And, so the next time when you look at this alert, you may have a little bit more understanding of why it's so important, where it began, and the legacy that's behind it. But before we begin talking about the alert and Amber and her legacy, you kind of need to know what it was like before the alert happened and before we had the methods we have today when it came to abductions and dealing with kidnappings and things. Before the alert, the 40s, 50s, 60s, and even in the 70s, we didn't hear about it. It was not tabletop conversation. You didn't hear about it. It wasn't really on the news unless it was a celebrity or a really high profile case like Charles Lindbergh's baby who was kidnapped. I mean, it wasn't part of our mainstream. It wasn't part of our society. It wasn't part of,
The most you saw were the missing posters that the family would put up in the store windows and on a telephone pole, stuff like that.
Sometimes at the post office.
Yeah, that's mostly what you saw. And then there were milk cartons. Yeah, we remember seeing, have you seen this child?
And those started in the early 80s.
On the back of a milk carton. And you don't see that anymore because they don't need to do it on that now.
No, but I mean, it was just, there wasn't, and even seeing the missing persons poster, kind of like what we have right here of Amber, was not very common either. I mean, you saw them periodically, but it wasn't
as prevalent.
And then, I don't know about your great grandparents or grandparents, but I know my grandparents, I was always told the stories, like we all are told, oh, your grandma said this, your grandpa said this, or so on. And my great grandparents, being in the Midwest, Nebraska, Kansas area, would come out and say, if you wander too far, the gypsies will get you. It was always, that was their warning or their threat to keep their kids close to home. But that was really all it got, and even then it was more just a joke or something funny. It really wasn't something that was truly serious. I mean, it was just, it just wasn't talked about. I mean, we talked about war and we talked about other things, but kidnapping and abductions, the world is safe. And then we got into the 80s, and that's when things really, really started to change. And I think a lot of the reasons it changed was because we had more media. We had cable television. We had MTV. We had a lot of the cable channels. We had, Apple brought out their very first computers. We had, people communicating in different ways, more ways than we had in the 70s and before. We had more magazines and more stories. We had, again, cable television, and we had, word of mouth was spreading. It was a different time.
HEB used to have a bulletin. They had a bulletin board over near the customer service area in that hallway, and it had all these missing kids on it. I'd forgotten about that. It was just devoted to missing kids.
For those of you who don't know who HEB is a local grocery chain down here in Texas.
Grocery store.
But like HEB, back where I grew up, King Soopers and Safeway had the same kind of bulletin board somewhere in their store that was littered with all the missing person, have you seen me things. But like I said, in the 80s, things really changed. The topic of abduction and kidnappings and how do we protect our kids really became a mainstream or prevalent. And the rate of it happening became more apparent, or at least it became more known that it was happening. And because of the rate of it going up, schools, police, parents developed what we call stranger danger and McGruff the crime dog, and teaching children a list of don'ts. And when I say don'ts, it's like don't take candy from a stranger. Don't pet a stranger's puppy dog if they have a puppy dog. Or don't take a ride from a stranger. Don't do a whole list of them. And a lot of times, back then, I'm a child of the 80s. I was in elementary school, especially for an elementary school or junior high. You'd walk down the hallway and they'd have these huge posters on the wall full of lists of the don'ts. Don't do this, don't do that. And when you're a kid, saying that to a kid is almost the same as saying, don't have that cookie before dinner because you're going to hurt. You're not going to be able to eat dinner. And
spoil your appetite.
You're going to spoil your appetite. And then like McGruff the crime dog, well, it was cutesy. I mean, a lot of time you'd see the little ads and the commercials things, and it became very cutesy. And it was almost like when McGruff would come, if someone would come in dressed as McGruff the crime dog, come into the schools, local
big
school
old dog
districts.
in a trench coat, detective trench coat.
Would come into the schools and to do little symposiums or what is that other word? Where they got the whole school together. Rallies or little events in the gymnasium, and the dog would come in, and it almost, in a way, in some ways, became a joke and comical a lot. It was like Mickey Mouse coming to see your school, and the concept and the idea behind it was kind of lost, because it all happened at the same time as the SAD movement, the Mothers Against Drug Driving, and the Just Say No campaign, so Say No to Drugs, all kind of got blended in all at the same. Dare, thank you. I couldn't think of the other one. All kind of got blended in at the same time. But the stranger danger and the McGruff the crime dog thing almost became comical, sadly. And
take a bite out of crime.
Yeah. But the message, and it's unfortunate because it did become comical, it didn't work, because the main reason it didn't work is we were giving kids all the list of the don'ts. Don't do any of these things, but we were never giving the why. as to, if I do take this candy, if I do take this ride, if I do these things, what would happen?
Yeah.
And you got to give the child enough fear to get them to stop and think about it. And so that way, if they do find themselves in that situation, it's not, oh, I want that piece of candy because it looks good, or I want to pet that puppy. It's, oh, wait a minute. If I don't know who you are, you're asking me to do something or wanting to give me something, and stopping and hearing that and knowing enough to turn around, walk away, or scream, or make some kind that this isn't a right situation. And for me, I personally have my own experience. I was a child of 8. My mother, yeah, I remember, like, just a few weeks before my incident, my situation happened, my mother had actually sat down with me at home in Colorado, in the Pinery, which was a subdivision south of Parker, Colorado. And she talked to me about stranger danger and said that, Julie, if you do this, if you take candy, or you do any of the don'ts, there's a chance you may not come home and may never see mommy or daddy again. And it gave me enough fear, not enough to give me nightmares.
Yeah, not the gory details.
Not the gory details, but it gave me enough, a little bit of fear in my subconscious, my psyche, to realize, when I got into that situation a week or two later, it gave me enough to realize what to do to get out of it. And what happened was, I was, again, 8 years old. I was playing in the front yard of my family's home in the Pinery with a red bat and a wiffle ball, being a normal kid. It was a September day. After school, and I was playing, and this canary yellow Camaro pulled up to my family's home. It had dark tinted windows and had like a gold star thing hanging from its rearview mirror. And its license plate was a Colorado license plate. And back then, and I think they're even still that way, it was a bright green license plate with the Rocky Mountain jagged lines on there saying Colorado. And it was DVT 1959Y. I forgot the Y. These two men got out, and they weren't necessarily scruffy looking, but you could tell that they weren't exactly up to any good either. I mean, my inner voice, I could hear my mom's voice in my head saying, run, go get help. This wasn't right. It gave me enough jolt or instinct inside of me after my mom's conversation with me to know this isn't a good situation. And I dropped the ball and bat, ran into the house, and thankfully the garage door was open. And I ran in and I found my grandma, and I told her, screaming, I was crying, and I told her what was going on, and she opened up the blinds, kind of like, peeking through, and she saw the vehicle, and she called the police, and they were able to apprehend the car and the 2 individuals, and they and the car were wanted in several other cases across Douglas County and Colorado area at that time. So, you never know. And thankfully my mom, got that into me and instilled enough fear into me that, I was able to run and do the right thing. And thankfully, because if I didn't do the right thing, I probably would not be sitting here today and being able to tell you my story. So it is important, and kids do listen. And, just, as my own experience, it shows, hey, giving these kids enough fear, enough push, can help.
Kids are naturally curious or helpful. Sometimes if somebody comes up and if they're smiling, they, might, hey, is your mommy home? Or something like that. But don't let them get that close to even say anything. But they'll say, they'll stop by a school and say, hey, your mommy had us, told me to come and get you. She's a friend of mine. And trusting and believing when they're littler, usually littler than 8, but
just giving them enough knowledge. And that's we as parents, not just parents, but people in our community, our teachers, neighbors, parents, grandparents, need to give instill that into our kids, to give them enough knowledge to be able to make the right decision should they be put into that position. And I'm not saying that every kid out there who does get abducted or kidnapped didn't have that knowledge, but every little bit helps. Every little bit of knowledge helps. Every little bit of information given to our children, even if it's enough just to scare them just a little bit,
Yeah.
can help prevent a tragedy in the future. I mean, it's one to grow on, so to speak.
Right.
But by the late '90s, mid to late '90s, the world of that dealt the way that how the world dealt with kidnappings and abductions changed. Um, it changed dramatically because something happened that was given to the general public. It's called the internet. The internet came in around 94, 95, and we had chat rooms, and we had a different way for predators to have accessibility to children and to young men and women out there. And they're like, oh, we don't have to go canvass neighborhoods anymore. We can just get them right there on the computer. We could say we're this 16-year-old, show a picture of a really cute guy or whatever, or boy, or whatever the situation may be, and get them to come meet you somewhere, and bam, you're taken. And sadly enough, that happens all too frequently. And it's while the internet has brought other forms of social media like Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, all these wonderful things. It's also brought the challenges of chat rooms and online predators and human trafficking and so many other things. While we have the good, unfortunately, we have the bad. Yeah. And it really started in the mid to late '90s. And with it really started, and the changes really started because of one little girl named Amber. And her legacy really changed how the world views abductions and kidnapping and what to do about it. And Amber's legacy, Amber, this is her story. This is her legacy. And Amber Renee Hagerman was born on November 25th, 1986 in Arlington, Texas, to the parents of Donna Williams, now Norris, and Richard Hagerman. Soon followed in 1990 her little brother Ricky. Amber was your typical child. She loved Barbies. She loved bicycle riding, playing outdoors, pizza, all the normal things that normal kids her age would like at that time. But the big thing about Amber, and one that not only her family talks about, but people who knew Amber, her past, her friends, family, relatives, everybody, and teachers and classmates all said the same thing about Amber. She always wanted to make sure everybody was safe and happy and cared for. It was just who Amber was. She wanted to make sure that, she wanted to take care of everybody. That was just who she was. And, she cared for everybody that was around her. If a child was happy or was unhappy, she wanted to make them happy. If they were hurt, she wanted to, bandage their boo-boos. And, she just was the natural mother hen, and that's who she was. But unfortunately for her, growing up in the home that she did with both of her parents proved to be a danger. Police were frequently called to the Hagerman home for domestic disturbances between Donna and Richard. And according to Donna, Richard was always drunk and was abusive to her, both physically and verbally, and also emotionally. On the last visit, the police said to Donna, that if we have to come again, that we would take your kids. And that was all that Donna needed to hear. She packed up what little she had and what they had and left. And they camped out for a few days in her car because people were like, well, why didn't you go to your parents' house? And she's like, she was too afraid that Richard would find her and put her parents in danger. She was just trying to hide out and try to figure out what her next step was. And eventually she got into a women's shelter, domestic violent women's shelter for safety, where they were able to help Donna get onto welfare and get an apartment and try to start getting her back up on her feet. Donna returned to school and work and ended up working full time. She cared for Amber and Ricky, and life returned to some form of normalcy. Unfortunately, yes, Richard would come around asking constantly for them to return home, but Donna, being the smart woman she was, knew that what would happen if she did return to that home. She knew that, yeah, he may be okay for a little bit, but then he would revert back to the behavior. And she just, no, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to deal with it anymore. So no, we're not going to move back in. I'm going to stay where I'm at. And that eventually led to their divorce. And, which seemed to be a pretty good thing for them. Eventually there's still some animosity and some, residual anger there. But eventually Donna allowed Richard to see the kids again because that was their daddy. And, they seemed to have some kind of...
Detente.
not necessarily that, but just a way of existing, coexisting and working things up, a system. In August of 1995, 5 months before Amber's abduction, Donna and the kids were selected to be part of a documentary about women on welfare and how they got out of it and the struggles and everything. And Pam Curry, who was the producer of the documentary, had no idea how the videos that her team were making at the time would have such a profound effect on Amber's case. The filming began 9 months after Donna moved into the apartment, and what they would do is they would follow Donna and the children around everywhere for their daily life, whether it was cooking dinner, reading bedtime stories. They would show Donna at work. They'd show the kids at school, on the playground, riding bikes, at her parents' house. Just the everyday activities, And they did this from August of 95 to January of 96. They would film Amber playing Ring Around the Rosie with her friends, being read a bedtime story by her mom. And sadly, on November 25th, 1995, 2 months before her abduction, they would film Amber's last birthday, which was her 9th. They showed her blowing out birthday candles on her cake, opening presents with her friends, laughing and playing, and enjoying what would be her last birthday. And again, they filmed until the beginning of January of 1996, which would be the month of Amber's abduction. On Saturday, January 13th, 1996, the day started. It was a typical Saturday here in Texas. It was unseasonably warm. So a lot of times here in Texas, when we have warm temperatures and the weather is nice, everybody is outside. They're doing whatever they, just getting out. So it started like a normal Saturday for Donna and her kids. They went to the park and played and had a good time. They went and had lunch. And by late afternoon, they headed to Jimmy and Glenda Woodston's house. That's Donna's parents on Highland Avenue. Jimmy Woodston was tinkering with his car up front when they arrived. He paused long enough to say hello to his daughter and her kids, and Glenda, his wife, came out and joined them and hugged the kids hello and hugged her grandbabies and her daughter. And, it was a very typical, normal, hi, Grandma, hi, Grandpa, just a normal introduction to the kiddos. And like Donna and Glenda and even Jimmy expected, it was about that time, right after they all did their greetings, that both children asked if they could go ride their bicycles. Grandpa, Jimmy, always kept a couple bicycles in the garage for the kids because the kids lived in an apartment with Donna and didn't have access to a place to be able to ride bicycles. So they kept them there at Grandma and Grandpa's house, and they'd come over like once a week to go ride bicycles around the block. And it was just a giant, almost kind of a giant circle that they would do a couple of times. And it was something that they'd done 1,000 times. It was about then that when both children asked if they could go ride their bikes. Again, Jimmy kept 2 bicycles in the house for the grandkids because they lived in the apartment and didn't have a place to ride. Both Donna and Glenda said, yeah, it's okay, go, just go around the block once or twice, but get back here, by a certain time because, they were going to start getting supper ready and they needed to wash up. And they said it was fine. And so, the Winstons had lived here on this street and on the street Highland Drive in the Arlington Highland Park Edition since 1975. So they'd been living in this neighborhood for quite a long time. And the children's mother, Donna, had ridden her own bicycle many times around that same circle that her kids now rode on. Both kids circled around the very bottom of the driveway, smiling and giggling, waving at their grandparents and their mom, and then started heading towards Claudia Street, but not before saying goodbye. And I love you, Mama. And her mom would say, told Amber, watch after your little brother. And she's like, of course, Mom, I love you. And, the cutesy kitty thing. And proceeded to ride away, ride their bikes away. And what Donna didn't know, but this would be the last time she would see her baby girl alive. As they rode off, the adults gave no second thought, for in their minds this was a safe neighborhood. There's no cause for danger. The crime rate was low. I mean, there was no reason to be worried or concerned or anything that danger was lurking. I mean, it was very safe, normal, happy neighborhood. And these kids had ridden this circle they were going on 1,000 times before. So as they pedaled around the 2 corners, they got to the corner where they had a decision to make. If they continued straight and to the left, which is where the now closed Winn-Dixie was, it was just a vacant parking lot, or they would have to take the right, which would lead them back onto Highland Avenue where their grandparents lived. But on this particular day, like kids always do, they're a little rebellious, and they decide, hey, we're not, after even mom said to come straight back, they're like, hey, we're gonna go to the ramps at the Winn-Dixie, and
out back at the loading dock.
Loading dock, and decided to go to the parking lot to the Winn-Dixie grocery store, which was now a vacant, empty parking lot, with the exception of a laundromat called Quick Wash that was shared the same parking lot as the former Winn-Dixie. And for those of you who don't know what Winn-Dixie is, Winn-Dixie was a grocery chain that was down here in Texas and throughout the South that I don't think no longer exists, but this was just the empty building and the empty parking lot left over from what was Winn-Dixie. But it had been closed for some time, but the neighborhood kids still enjoyed riding on the ramps there in the former docking area, like Barb said just a few minutes ago. But the parking lot where Amber and Ricky were headed was on the busy East Abrams Street, just a block down from the vast General Motors plant. This spot was far from isolated, but this particular area where the ramps were was kind of isolated because it was the back side of the building and the road that was there. The only people that really traveled that particular road were the ones that lived back on that street in that neighborhood. Otherwise, it was just, not many cars were there, and kids would always go there with their bikes and skates and skateboards and stuff and go up and down this ramp. And that's where Ricky and Amber went that day. And that day it was broad daylight, bright, clear day. They rode over there, went up and down the ramps for several minutes, and it was about then when Ricky told his sister, "I'm going to go home because Mama said that we were just supposed to ride around the block and not be here." And her sister, kind of responded, "Oh, go on ahead. I'll be right behind you." And so he rode back to his grandparents' house while Amber remained there, continuing to ride up and down the ramps in her pink bicycle. When Ricky returned back to his grandparents' house, his grandpa had noticed that Amber wasn't with them and asked, "Well, hey, where's Sissy? Where's your sister?" And Ricky replied that she stayed for one more ride over on the ramps. And Grandpa just kind of shook his head and kind of probably thought, they weren't she wasn't supposed to be there. Go get her and get her, make sure she gets her tail home. So, he sent Ricky back to find her. And when Ricky, came back a short bit later and, told his grandpa that he couldn't find his sister. And that's when, Jimmy was slightly concerned, like, oh, where did that kid get off to now? Like we're all kids. I'm sure we've all been on our bicycles and, got distracted and gone off somewhere. That's probably what he thought at the time, is that she got distracted and went down another road that she shouldn't have been, or been somewhere where she shouldn't have been. So that's when Jimmy Winston jumped into his truck and sped to the parking lot. And back at the parking lot after Ricky left to return to his grandparents' home, Amber had continued to ride her pink bicycle up and down the ramps at the old Winn-Dixie. But little did she know that sitting a few feet away in a 1980s or 1990s full-sized fleet-side pickup truck, short-wheel based single cab, rear window with clear, no sliding window, no chrome, solid black color, no striping. The truck was in very good condition and would appear to have no visible damage. And the man that was sitting within this black pickup truck was either white or Hispanic, between the ages of, somewhere in his 20s or 30s, a little under 6 foot tall, medium build, brown hair or black hair. He was sitting in this truck watching Amber go up and down the ramp. And like I said earlier, the only active store in the shopping center was the Quick Wash laundromat. But unfortunately, the end of the way that it was situated, because here's the Winn-Dixie, and then of course here's the Quick Wash, and the side that was facing where the ramps were and where this man was in his pickup truck was just a brick wall. It was the end of the building, and the only way anybody would see anything was if they were coming in and out of the building, or maybe that might have heard anything. But then again, in a laundromat, like most laundromats, have loud music playing, or you got the wash machines and the dryers going and people talking, so they may or may have not heard anything. We don't know. But he sat there watching Amber, and, like, again, nobody could see anybody walking up. But however, across the street, now if you look at the way it's set up, you've got the Winn-Dixie right here, you've got the Quick Wash, and then down here, like a triangle, the point of the triangle down here was the only witness that we have in this case. He was a former deputy sheriff named Jimmy Cavell. He was doing yard work. Yes, we do yard work in January in Texas. But he was out doing yard work, and he had seen Amber riding her bicycle and laughing and playing like all the other neighborhood kids did multiple times before, when they would frequent that area. And he also saw the pickup truck, but at the time he thought nothing of it because there were a lot of cars there in that vicinity. You know, a lot of them were, parking there because they were doing their laundry or waiting for somebody who was doing their laundry. Maybe someone worked at the laundromat. So it was a typical Saturday, but he didn't think much of it. Okay, there's a pickup truck in Texas. Pickup trucks are everywhere, so it didn't alert him to anything. But again, he resumed his yard work and continued to busy himself. When about 3:18 p.m., he heard the high-pitched scream of a young girl. He whipped back around and he looked at the scene before him. And when he saw this white or Hispanic male pick up an 80-pound little girl off her bicycle, and that's when you knew this person has to be extremely strong because this is an 80-pound little girl who wiggling, moving, fighting little girl, and he's holding her, and her feet never, ever touched the ground. He picked her up and was gone. He never, without her touching the ground, he threw her into the cab of his pickup truck. All the while, Mr. Calville had contacted the police to report the abduction of this little girl, and had police en route. Mr. Jimmy Cavell, excuse me, said that after the man loaded Amber into the cab of the pickup truck, he drove slowly through the parking lot, headed toward Abram Street. And as he was pulling out of the parking lot, Abram Street goes north and south. And if he went, in this case, right, which is what he had anticipated, it would eventually the road would eventually lead to State Route 360, where you could turn left or right, which would eventually take you, if you go left, it would take you to I-30. If you go right, it would take you to I-20. But instead, he kind of shocked everybody when he took a left onto Abram, which would lead to the heart of Arlington, Texas, and to Fort Worth. Now, for those of you who don't know Texas, Arlington is kind of in the middle between Dallas and Fort Worth in the Metroplex. It's a huge area, so it's a little suburb of these two bigger areas. But so it was really kind of shocking when he turned back towards town, towards where everybody was. So, kind of, okay, a little bit shocking. Well, maybe it was a good thing. Maybe somebody will catch him. Maybe we'll see him maybe someone will see him where he went. And about this time, the police arrived on the scene. When Jimmy Winston spotted the police car, because he arrived at the same team, like just within a couple seconds after the police arrived. He saw the police car there at the Winn-Dixie and pulled up and told the officer told Mr. Winston that a man who lived nearby had heard the screaming of a little girl and saw a man carrying a young child into a pickup truck. The witness had called 911, and the officer raced to the scene. Just moments later, but all was found left behind was the pink bicycle laying on the concrete of the parking lot. And then that's when Jimmy Winston's heart sank, because he said, "That's my granddaughter's bicycle." And that was like 8 minutes. 8 minutes. From the time that little girl rode away on her bicycle until that man, Jimmy Cavell, called 911. 8 minutes. That's not a lot of time. And it happened extremely quickly. So, abductions can happen fast. That's in the grand scheme of things, and sadly enough, 8 minutes is a little bit long in comparison to some of the other abduction cases that I've researched. But Jimmy Cavell again phoned 911 after hearing Amber's screams, and this was his exact quote. He said, "I saw her riding up and down the vacant lot. He had told reporters and the police she was by herself. I saw this man in a pickup truck jump out, grab her. When she screamed, I figured the police ought to know, so I called them. I wish I had known more, but I did all I could do." Police theorized that this was a stranger abduction and told Mr. Winston to return back to his home, and that the police would join them momentarily to start the search and to gather more information about Amber and the situation. Mr. Winston returned home and proceeded to tell his daughter, Donna, that her little girl, Amber, was gone. And police did arrive on the scene and had proceeded to start the search and started getting information, doing who's in Amber's life, who, all the people in Amber's life, everyone who would have any kind of contact with her, school, teachers, church people, anybody who would have contact. Donna also, at the same time, proceeded to call Amber's father, Richard Hagerman, to inform him that Amber had been taken and to come to her parents' house as quickly as he could. And he then eventually arrived in the scene shortly afterwards. And for you guys a little bit more information about how troubling this is, some statistics here. In a typical year, 750,000 American children are reported missing, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. A vast majority of that number are runaways or family abductions, otherwise known as non-custodials, and a very small number of them are stranger abductions. And of those numbers, the stranger abductions that are reported each year, one in every 3 or 4 days on average. But a stranger abduction are the most troubling of categories of missing children because 9 out of 10 of the victims are female, and half of them were sexually assaulted, and 3 out of 4 killed within the first 3 hours in those cases. So when you're dealing with stranger abductions in particular, every second counts. So that's why in this particular situation, because they didn't know who it was, they concluded it was a stranger abduction. They did not know who this person was. They did not know where he's going. They did not know where he was going or who he was. It's crucial to get the word out. It's crucial to get, the ball rolling as fast as they can because the clock is ticking. But the truck that was driven by Amber Hagerman's abductor had been seen outside the laundry mat in the days prior to her abduction, and as well as that day. Near the Winn-Dixie before the girl was abducted. He'd been there probably a couple hours prior to her being abducted, so he'd been there for a bit. And it had also been there a few days prior as well. Police theorized that this was an impetuous crime of opportunity, since Amber had no established pattern of riding her bicycle there at that time of day. She would be, all the kids would ride there, and everybody in the neighborhood knew they would come to this particular area because of those ramps. So that's why they called it impetuous, because he was canvassing not the child, but the area, because he knew that this was an attractive area for kids, and he was waiting for that right moment to pounce. And sadly enough, it was Amber. But, like I said, the neighborhood kids go there quite some time to ride bikes and skateboards on the ramps outside of the backside of the Winn-Dixie. The man likely watched Amber and Ricky ride into the parking lot together, and then, sadly enough, when Ricky decided to return home to obey his mother's wishes, is when he pounced. And it was just moments after her mother left that, Cavell said the man grabbed her and started to drive west out of the parking lot and then disappear. After the disappearance, it took some time to get the word out. It was not until like 10 o'clock that night on the news when the word started to spread that Amber was missing. But the abduction was the front page news in Texas at that time. It was everywhere. Police were hopeful that other witnesses would step forward, perhaps someone who had seen the feisty girl struggling with the abductor as he tried to drive away, down that road, or knew where he was going, or saw a girl fighting or crying in that truck. You were hoping that somebody saw something somewhere. Police and FBI formed a special task force to investigate all the tips that were coming in and to help with the large area searches. The little girl's smiling image became omnipresent in the Metroplex. Coincidentally, at a local TV station, this was the documentary that was being filmed on Donna, done by Pam Curry, who had been working with Donna about her struggle on welfare, and the station released a videotape of some of the videos that were taken, that Donna's crew had taken, and it made the moving images were so profound. It made Amber real to people, and it endeared her image to the public. It was endeared and became so widely known during the investigation that the local police chief would later call Amber Arlington's child. These images inspired the public to help in any way they could do in searching, and this was the first round of them posting that video clip.
Yeah, they were still in the editing stage of the special, the documentary, so it hadn't aired yet. So that didn't make her a target, that. That's what I thought when I first heard about the documentary was being filmed. But they hadn't aired it yet, but they threw together a clip of all the different stuff they had.
Mm-hmm. And they also, just so you know, they also did do background checks and check out the camera crew, and they checked out Pam, and they were all cleared of any connection to Amber's disappearance. Amber's mother did appear on the television, the news, pleading with her pleas, pleading, "Don't hurt my baby. She's just a little girl." The mother cried, you know, "Please bring my baby home safe," begging to the man who took her daughter Amber, you know, pleading and begging for this. And this, sadly, these images of moms and dads pleading for their babies' lives has become almost a mainstay in this country, if not world. Yeah. But it really kind of was really omnipresent when you saw it with Amber. Amber was really the first that really started using different techniques. But sadly, no additional witnesses were found, and the words and pleas from Amber's loved ones, went unheeded. The police and FBI continued to search. They had helicopters. They searched all the surrounding areas, but the same question kept popping up. What can we do? Where can we search? Nobody really knew, because this was a stranger abduction. They didn't know where to go. They didn't know who to look for. They didn't know where to look. And or what we could even do in a situation like that. That question, I think, came up so much during the investigation of this case. And you know, people are also asking, what can we do to make it better? What can we do to help prevent this? What can we do when these things do happen? How to get the word out faster? So these were questions that were asked all over the place. And police said that it was highly possible that there were other witnesses who saw what happened, but are fearful about coming forward, because with it being a Saturday afternoon, it was a nice day. The laundromat was right next door to where the abduction scene was. Police were concerned that there were people that were at the laundromat who may know what happened or may have seen something, but because these people were maybe undocumented and living in this country illegally, were afraid to come forward because they were going to be deported, or there's a possibility of deportation. But Sergeant Ben Lopez, Sergeant Grant Gildon, and the chief of police of Arlington Police have said that will not happen. No one will be deported. That they just ask you, please, if you have any information in regards to the disappearance or the abduction of this little girl, to please come forward. They even set up a dedicated tip line to help anyone calling in with tips, that they could do it anonymously. They just needed information, and quick, because this little girl's life is in serious danger. Police have said that it is their hope, now this is in 2024, that somebody in the community may saw something maybe that they couldn't or didn't come forward with 28 years ago out of fear or not wanting to get involved. Arlington Assistant Police Chief Kevin Colby, he said, for whatever reason, we need folks to search their minds and bring forward anything that they may have, for it may be of value to the investigation. Even the smallest or most insignificant thing could be the answer. I mean, so many times I've seen when researching or investigating things for this show and for my job and stuff, I've seen it where, you know, it's 25, 30, 40, 50 years later, and somebody comes forward. They said, you know, I couldn't come forward at the time because I was fearful for my life. Or it was my brother or my uncle, my grandparent, my dad, or whatever the situation is. And they couldn't come forward because they were terrified for their own life, or because they were in a relationship where they were connected to the bad guy. Yeah. You know, and they couldn't just step away because it would have been too noticeable, and it was just, you know, they might remember something and were too afraid to come forward. So, you know, it doesn't matter, even though it's 28 years later, it's important to come forward. If you know anything, or if you knew somebody was acting off, or you had a family member that was acting kind of strange and not normal around that time, or they quickly sold their pickup truck, or they changed their appearance, or they moved away, or, you know, they changed their typical day-to-day behaviors. You know, if you know anything, even if this is a coworker, even if you return, you know, back to the stockyards, because the famous Fort Worth historical stockyards are right nearby where the abduction had transpired. Police say it is highly possible that there were other witnesses who saw what happened, but are fearful about coming forward. With it being a Saturday afternoon, it was a nice day. The laundromat was right next to the abduction scene. Police were concerned that people that were there at the laundromat would be afraid to come forward because some of them might be undocumented or living in this country illegally. and were afraid of deportation. But Sergeant Ben Lopez and Sergeant Grant Gilden and the chief of police have promised and guaranteed that that will not happen, that the Arlington police have said that they just want information about the abduction and the abductor, and they set up a dedicated tip line for anybody calling in about tips, and you can do it anonymously. And again, a lot of times, I've seen this in a lot of cases I've dealt with where, it's something that we may have seen or witnessed or, saw happen, and it's just a moment thing. And at the time, we're like, and not that much about it. And, just that little nagging thought in the back of your head. Not, if you saw something like that, that might be just, you thought was insignificant, like a child crying in the bed of, or in the cab of a pickup truck, say something. You never know. Even though it's 28 years later, your tip could be the one to solve it. So, anything helps. Police, they hope that somebody in the community, or hope is that somebody in the community saw something. Maybe they couldn't come forward 25 or 28 years ago out of fear or not wanting to get involved. Because a lot of times that's a big problem, is a lot of people don't want to get involved because we don't know anything, or they're afraid. Because I've seen this a lot too, where, they've been a part of a family. They may know who did it, and the man who did it was abusive and controlling, and they were fearful, if they came forward, that their life would be in jeopardy or in danger. Or it was a family member, like a parent or a grandparent, and they were, knew they were stuck in a situation they couldn't get out of. One, because they didn't have they controlled the finances or controlled the family or whatever. The dynamic, you never know. But, I've seen it that, after years have passed, the dynamic has changed. People die, people divorce, move on, and they're thinking, oh, it's 28 years later, it won't matter. Yes, it does matter. So if you have anything that if you know anybody in your family or friends or relatives, co-workers, anybody that was acting really odd at that time, sold a truck, disappeared quickly, or moved away quickly, for no reason at all, even if you think, well, it's not like them, or they wouldn't do something like that, you never know. Go ahead and bring that information. You can call the number below in the description and do your tip anonymously, because you never know. Maybe that tip might bring closure to this family. But, Arlington Assistant Police Chief Kevin Colby said, for whatever reason, we need folks to search their minds and bring forward anything that they may have, for it may be of value to their investigation. Even the smallest and most insignificant thing can bring the answer. And it's just like, they just want them to go look, think back, look, and say, gee, I was there. I saw something, or, something that, at the time I didn't think much about it, but now I think about it, it seems kind of odd, or it didn't seem exactly right. That may be the answer. Or, my buddy Bob was kind of acting kind of odd, or my coworker George, decided, who has been to the company for X amount of time, suddenly just decided to move. Anything kind of odd.
I've always wondered about George, though.
Anything kind of odd or weird, or whatever, that just didn't seem right, at that time in 1996. I know it's a long time to remember, but sometimes think back. Sometimes the most significant thing that may be insignificant to us might be the most significant in the case. So please, 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 I can't implore it enough, come forward with your any information or tips you may have. But in the aftermath of all of this, in her disappearance, dozens of police officers and federal agents and Texas Rangers all descended upon Arlington, looking for the missing girl. And they only paused just for a brief amount of time, like 30 minutes here, 10 minutes there, long enough to get food, maybe a quick nap. They paused literally. They paused just long enough in the search. Just to take care of basic necessities. But they had people working around the clocks, answering phones and following up on leads and tips and searches, anything from that, doing searches, following upon family members, following upon friends, co-workers, and people that are in the area. They even followed and talked to people like construction workers, FedEx drivers, UPS drivers, people at the laundromat, people might have been that were walking down the street, people that were, anybody and everybody that could have been within a certain, I think it was like a 10-mile radius. They talked to anybody and everybody they could, trying to find any tip, any lead, anything that would help locate this little girl. And it was about 4:30, 5 o'clock on the evening that she disappeared, when the task force was formed, the initial one. missing person flyers like this one right here we have behind here were created. Were sent out. Things are starting to trickle, and it was about at that 10 o'clock news. What Pam was filming became vitally important were the videos that Pam Curry took. They had filmed most of the documentary. Most of the time, when you see a missing persons case, it's a still photo like this. It's grainy. It's maybe a couple years older. It's not, a newer picture. So in this case, we had moving photos. We had a video. We had home videos. We had something that the public could relate to, and made it real.
And how they looked normally, rather like Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin in his school picture, slicked down hair. It doesn't look like him normally. So those videos were how she was like just weeks before.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this was the way people were introduced to this case, was these moving images of a little girl blowing birthday candles out, playing Ring Around the Rosie and hopscotch, getting a bedtime story read to her, playing on a playground, things that we associate with innocence, with children, with childhood. This is how the public were introduced to her. And it made everybody, inspired everybody to, even more people, this was like the second run through of these images going through the news, and as the more and more they would do this, and it was almost like on repeat every time the news was on, these videos would be shown, and it spread not only in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it went to Austin, to Houston, to San Antonio, to Midland, to El Paso, and the story spread in these images of this little girl moving and doing these things that normal children do, endeared this little girl to the state of Texas, and then eventually into the world. And it made people were coming from all over the state to help search for this little girl, putting out flyers. I mean, I was not here personally, but from what people have told me, Arlington, I mean, you couldn't go a few feet without seeing somebody staple up one of her missing posters up on a wall, or stick it to a window in one of the local stores, walking down the street asking questions. People were everywhere searching for this little girl. I mean, it was huge. It was the largest search at that time in Texas for a missing individual. It was insane. It was just, everybody was everywhere. And as this video was shown on the news over and over and over again, more and more people would show up. So it was an incredible thing, and very ironic and lucky and coincidental that they had these, and that this documentary was being filmed. But they were working alongside the authorities and the police, trying to look at any tips or messages, anything that could help bring Amber home. Meanwhile, while people were searching and doing all the following tips, the police, on the other hand, went down and they had a list of every single black pickup truck in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area that could possibly be the one that, they had a whole list of them, and of one of them could possibly be involved in Amber's abduction. But here in Texas, that's like searching for a needle in a pile of needles. Everybody has a pickup truck here in Texas. They're everywhere, and majority of them, a good portion of them are black. Yeah. So again, it was like looking for a needle in a pile of needles. It's like, so they had that, like, I think it was like 1,500 or something like that numbers just in the certain parameter that they were looking at. So they went door to door and they talked to everybody that had a pickup truck, and nobody didn't find anybody. They even looked at Amber's dad, Richard's family friend, Michael Thompson, who also had a black pickup truck, and people were like pointing at him and suspecting him and saying, "Oh, he did it. He had to do it. He had odd behavior," and just everyone was pointing at this guy. And they actually did a polygraph test, and he passed, and they deemed that he was not involved, or that he was actually, I think it was like 45 minutes or an hour away at the time of Amber's abduction, so that there was no way he could have been involved. On January 16, 1996, the FBI finally got involved, and the relatively small task force became even a grander task force, because now we had the FBI involved. We had a bigger, they actually had a call center dedicated for answering phone calls and taking any tips or anything or any suggestions, anything that came into the helpline. They had even more helicopters. They had dogs, even bigger, wide spread searching for this little girl. Texas Rangers got involved as well. Everyone was doing everything they could do, but unfortunately and sadly, it just wasn't enough. On the evening of January 17th, 1996, 5 days after Amber had been abducted, a massive storm front came through northern Texas. In the Dallas-Fort Worth area that night or that day. And by that evening, after the storm passed, a man by the name of Stuart Cocksher was out walking his dog behind the Forest Hill apartment complex in North Arlington, about 4 miles from where Amber was abducted, when his dog picked up a scent down by the creek that was directly behind the apartment complex. When Stuart went to investigate what was causing his dog to go panic and bark like crazy, he thought he saw a human hand sticking out up from the creek side. When he went down for a closer look, he spotted a young female child that was naked with only one sock on her left foot, laying in the creek. He immediately hollered for help because of the rain. The water was rushing pretty good, so he wanted someone to hold on to the child to make sure she didn't get pushed down further down the creek. So then another person came down and was holding her while he ran back to his apartment and had his wife, Edie Cocksher, call 911. When the call came into 911, Edie was like, I think we have found the body of the missing little girl. She's in our creek. And when that went out, every single police officer, including Mike Simpson, who was the task force leader at the time, and Ben Lopez, as well as the FBI, and everybody is in Texas Rangers, everybody arrived on the scene at the Forest Hill apartment complex, hoping against hope that the body that was found and discovered, that it wasn't Amber. They were praying that wasn't Amber. It wasn't going to be Amber. But when the medical examiner's office arrived and CSI arrived on the scene and turned the body over, they saw that the girl's throat had been slit from ear to ear. It was one severe, massive cut and a lot of stab wounds to her throat area. But there were no defensive wounds and there were no signs of restraint. There's no signs that her mouth had been, there's like something gagged or anything. So they had the body was removed from the creek, and then the creek itself was roped off, and the body was taken to the local medical examiner's office for identification. And by the next morning, it was determined and confirmed that the body found in the creek of the Forest Hill apartment complex was that of 9-year-old Amber Hagerman. What started out as a missing person case fastly and quickly turned into a homicide case, and the search for the killer had begun. They had gathered all the evidence and DNA and anything and everything that was around that area, including security footage from the apartment complex side. Anything that was around there, they gathered all of it, and from Amber and from the crime scene. Darylyn Perryman, which was at the time the Arlington Victim Assistance Officer in 1996, and essentially, just so you know what an assistant officer is, it's one that's there that has the authority. They stay with the family in case things like this pop up. They're the ones that just kind of relay to the family. The body was found. It's your daughter. It's not your daughter. It's their support system and a liaison between the family and the local authorities. In this case, it was Darylyn Perryman, which was when she was at the Winston home at the time when she got the page and eventual phone call from the Arlington police. In this case, it was Mike Simpson, to let her know she had just a few minutes to tell the family about the identification of the little girl before it would be put on the local news and be airing and blasting everywhere. Darylyn had the unfortunate and very sad task of informing the family and Donna that Amber was dead and that the little girl they found was in fact Amber. So and it would take until January 19th, 1996, which was 2 days after Amber's body was found and identified, that Donna was finally allowed and was reunited with her daughter in one form or fashion. Something that the medical examiner's office was surprised to find out when they were determining the time of death. It was determined that Amber had only died just mere hours before being dumped into the creek, meaning whoever took her and eventually killed her, kept her alive through Tuesday and late into Wednesday. So again, she was kidnapped on a Saturday and she was killed sometime late that Tuesday or early Wednesday morning and then dumped shortly before Stewart found her. This not only shocked the police, but it disheartened them, knowing that Amber had been alive for a few days, but they had no way of finding her and preventing her tragic death. On January 20th, 1996, just 4 days after Amber's body is found, she was laid to rest in a funeral unlike anything that Arlington City had ever seen. Thousands of people came from all around Texas and the country to mourn this little girl and to grieve for her. And the police and FBI were also attended the funeral and the gravesite service. They had people on the inside and the outside trying to see if anybody that was there was acting odd or acting abnormal for the situation. But because of the enormous amount of people that were there, it became an almost impossible task to be able to do something like that because it was just too many people. Yeah. And just for you guys to know, a lot of times police, when a victim is killed and found the body, they have the funeral. A lot of times the person who did the crime can tend to show up at the funeral and graveside services with the others, and is kind of acts off a little odd, doesn't have the emotional grievance that everybody else does, and is kind of just watching and taking pride in his handiwork.
Same with things like arsonists.
Yeah.
Show up at the fire.
Exactly.
Watching with everybody.
So it's part of the psychology. So this was, unfortunately, because it was so many people.
I did that.
Yeah. Or I did that, or seeing the grief, and it's in sadly enough, in some cases, in some psychologies, it can be almost a sexual thing. It's sick, but it's part of the psychology, unfortunately. But because of the enormous arrival of so many people, it became impossible for the police and the FBI to be able to do something like that. 3 weeks after the abduction, authorities released a psychological profile, hoping to smoke out the killer. Which, for me personally, as a psychologist, having them do that at this time of, it was 1996 when this was happening, and the theory of a psychological profile was something that was relatively unheard of in a criminal setting. It was something that the FBI, they had started the Behavioral Analyst Unit. Yes, there's really a BAU in the, for those of you Criminal Mind fans out there really is a BAU out there. But the aspect of studying the behavior of a crime scene to help lead to the bad guy was relatively unheard of, in some circles even laughed at. So for them to actually do this for this case was a shock to me. I was like, oh my gosh, they actually did this. But it was also at the same time really cool that they did this, and it showed that just in a short time the mindset changed, that hey, we're willing to even try it. Hey, if it works, great. We're even willing to put that out there. So this is their psychological profile of the killer. So if you're listening to this and you know somebody that may fit this fit that at the time, please say something, because maybe, like my instincts, maybe your instincts are just as good, and maybe you might know who this person is. But this is the psychological profile. They said the profile suggested the man was 25 years of age and lived or worked near the spot where he dumped the body. Authorities revealed that the girl was alive for 2 full days after she was abducted, which likely meant there was a crime scene somewhere else in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Police theorized that someone caused the killer to snap, or maybe have an argument with the loved one, or domestic dispute, loss of job. Maybe they were a transient worker and had their job that they were working on ended suddenly, and they had to leave, and so they had to dispose of her. It could be any number of things. They said the killer's personality or appearance may have changed as a result of the trauma. So if you know somebody at that time whose appearance just radically changed without a reason, I know some of us dye our hair sometimes, but like everything changed just suddenly. That might be a good thing to alert the police to. Arlington police spokesman says, it is our hope that someone out there will hear this and will think, gee, this sounds like someone I know, or remember my husband or boyfriend, uncle, father, or someone acting kind of odd or out of place at this time. Police had plenty of people that had the same reaction. Hey, maybe this says odd, or they had a lot of tips. They had from the time the crime happened in 1996 to now here in 2024, they had 7,000 leads. Of the 7,500, 5,500 of them were in the first 18 months after the murder, up to 7,000 now here in 2024. But unfortunately, none of them have led to her killer. So we're hoping that somebody will hear this story that we're telling today and, might realize, hey, my uncle, my aunt, my brother, whomever was acting kind of fishy or odd or changed his appearance, drove a black pickup, or may know something at that time. In the summer of 1997, after investing more than $1 million in the Amber Hagerman investigation, the Arlington police were forced to disband the task force and tail back the investigation. Though it is still open and still a very active case, they had to tail back on things. A mural and a memorial tree were dedicated to her, were placed in the spot where Amber was abducted, as a reminder, and to also make sure no one would forget Amber, and to keep her story in the media. In the days and weeks after Amber's death and funeral, people were asking the question, what could have we done? Could we done something? Is there something more we could have done? Is there a way we could have helped prevent this or get the words out about Amber's disappearance faster? Is there something we could have done? Is there something we could do? And one of those people, along with Donna, created something that would do just that, not just for missing children, but so many other people in this world. And Barb here will tell you more about Amber's legacy and what that is. Barb?
Yeah, her legacy was heartbreak for her family, but it led to hope for future cases. The next few months of 1996, inspired by the tragic case of Amber Hagerman, 3 separate ideas were brought to the right people. 2 ideas were merged later. That set in motion plans to provide greater protection for children. Within days of Amber's death, her mother, Donna, was calling for tougher laws regarding kidnappers and sex offenders. Donna and Amber's father, Richard, soon established PASO, People Against Sex Offenders, collecting signatures, publicity, etc. Soon their congressman, Mark Klaas, drafted the Amber Hagerman Child Protection Act, which led to creating the National Sex Offender Registry, which I had never known that it was connected to Amber's case, but that was a big thing. And that was around June of 96. You said you were talking about Mark Klaas, what you knew about it. I hadn't known.
Mark Klaas actually is the father of Polly Klaas. Polly Klaas was a young girl that was kidnapped out of her bedroom in California during a slumber party. And then several weeks later was found in a old logging pile of wood. And her killer was eventually captured and tried and I think has been since executed in California. But Mark Klaas and his family created the Polly Klaas Foundation to help families of missing people, get know what to do, know the process, get the missing posters out and stuff like that. So when Amber went missing and all that, I know that Richard and Hagerman and Donna, mainly Richard, contacted Mark Klaas and the foundation to help them in the case of Amber and get their support, and then eventually led to the sex offender thing.
Yeah, when I was researching this, the name was familiar, but when she said that Polly, I remember that. I'm from California. I remember Polly Klaas, but I didn't connect it with Mark. And but I remember when that happened. Meanwhile, a local mother, Diane Simone, had been following news reports on the Amber case and had an idea. She called KDMX radio in Dallas and asked, "We have weather and civil defense alerts. Why not alerts for abducted children?" She proposed broadcasts to engage the listening public to help spot vehicles, etc., and to locate the kids. The radio station thought that was pretty good, and so they started manually created alerts, just wrote them out and called participating radio station and had them announce them. And that went on for about 2 years, over the next 2 years, until the automated systems were created by the Child Alert Foundation in 1998. But so she came at it one direction. In July, Bruce Sabert, whose daughter was close to Amber, and Richard Hagerman, Amber's father, attended a media symposium. Sabert talked on how the police could work with the broadcast media to quickly get info out to the public. Radio KRLD reporter C.J. Wheeler approached Dallas police chief with Sabert's ideas, and combined with Diane's idea to the radio station, a plan was launched. It was called Amber's Plan. So from two different directions, approach the police, approach the radio, and they said, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. Let's do this. Following the automation of Amber Alerts by Child Alert Foundation, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children expanded its role to promote the Amber Alert beyond Texas. So by 2005, all 50 states had it or a variation of it. Over the years, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, Mexico, Canada joined the roster. The Europe did, Australia, and even China, which I had not realized. I thought that was amazing. All over the world are some form variations of these alerts. Then adding in Google, Facebook, and cell phones, etc. You've got a lot.
So your alerts are like everywhere. I mean, it's just you. Yeah. I mean, it's. I think it's really neat that other countries have adopted it. So, I mean, it's not just a United States thing or an American thing. It's a global thing, and it's protecting children. And here in a second, and other people just on a global schedule, global scene. It's getting the word out there, and with the media resources we have now, like TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, or as now called X, Facebook, and all the other social medias that we have there, email, things like that. We can get that word out there, and it's not just going on a local scale; it's going everywhere. So it's really impressive.
I remember. It was really, I don't know why I remember this, but I remember walking to a bus stop. I was passing a Jack in the Box on Old Torf Avenue, and I saw a bus with one of those signs on the side of the bus, and it was advertising the existence of the alert. So it was brand new, but it was letting people know that this was coming. And it just stuck in my brain. And I hadn't thought about it until we started doing this.
Yeah. And just so you know, Old Torf Avenue is a fairly large road here in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, it goes across town. Now the Amber Alerts, they took Amber's name and they had the mnemonic for it was America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response. There's criteria for the Amber Alert alone is law enforcement must confirm an abduction, not just a kid run away. Child must be at risk of serious injury or death. Must have sufficient description on the child, the captor, or the vehicle to issue an alert. You can't issue an alert if you don't have something to tell people to watch for. And they must be 17 years or younger. Many agencies have varied lists. If the case does not meet the criteria, the U.S. Department of Justice developed CART, Child Abduction Response Teams, the program to assist local agencies for those that were not covered by the actual Amber criteria.
I just think it's neat that, even if this case doesn't meet criteria for an Amber Alert, they still have something to help those that don't. So everybody is protected, no matter what the situation.
Right, and so they may not get the Amber Alert on your phone and all that other stuff, but they have the ways to get it out elsewhere.
Get the flyers and everything else needed quickly.
Yeah, now, the alerts are as follows. The Amber Alert, the original Amber Alert, is child abducted 17 years or younger.
But going really quick before you go into that, the Amber Alert was just one alert, and they realized, hey, we've got other situations that we could use a different alert in. So as Barbara's going to go through here in a minute, the Amber Alert then spawned out several other alerts that help in other situations. So
yeah, I remember the first time I saw the silver alert on those highway signs. That is for 65 years and older, usually with Alzheimer's. They're notified within the first 72 hours. But if their safety is at stake, or the mental deficiency was a factor in their missing, sometimes they'll just get in their car and just drive. They'll just drive. They don't know where they're going or what, but that's how they find. That's why they put the alerts on the freeway signs. Blue alert is a search for a suspect in killing or seriously injuring a member of law enforcement. There's also endangered missing person. That's a person with mental disabilities, also known as a purple alert in Florida. Camo, that's missing military or veteran. If they may be a danger to themselves or others, and like PTSD set them off, and there's something I'm not sure where they are anymore.
That's actually probably a really good one to have, because I know a lot of times, coming from a military family, my dad was a former retired captain in the Air Force and stuff, and he always would tell me stories of these soldiers who have PTSD, who were like trained Navy SEALs or Black Ops, and all these ones who are trained to be killers, having these moments and all it takes is one of these people to get out into the general public and have one of these mental breakdowns, think they're back in a war zone or something, to cause havoc. So having that camo alert out there alerts the public that, hey, a person like this is out there, be on the lookout, beware, let us know, so they can be taken into custody safely. Because a lot of times these people who are like the Navy SEALs or Green Berets and things like that are not going to be taken in safely. They're going to have to be, taken out.
And things like 4th of July fireworks can trigger stuff like that. The noise. It's not
a car accident. If they got like a head injury in a car accident and it triggers something, I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
So having that camo alert is I think is awesome to have.
Clear alert. That one covers the age gap group, adults 18 to 64. So if something's going on, there's
which I think is also awesome to have, because there's a lot of times, and I've in the research I've done for this show and in my life, there have been a lot of times when it's been college age kids, like Maura Murray in our last episode, who was 21 years old but disappeared, and they knew what kind of car she was driving, you knew kind of where she was or what, and it's nice to have an alert to say, hey, this isn't a runaway, this isn't a normal missing person, this is a college kid that disappeared, to have an alert. I think it shows that it's every life counts. Doesn't matter what walk of life, where they're from, who they are, that there's an alert for them.
Yeah. Some states have local variations. Like in California, there's a feather alert. That's a member of First Nations. And the Indian community is missing. There's also Athena's Law for localized alert that may not meet the criteria, but it's trying to find somebody just like the active shooter alert. I missed that one. Localized alert near the scene, like within a mile and a half or so. They're GPS based. You will be notified that there's an active shooter in your area to just stay in your home,
take cover,
stuff like that.
Whatever's needed.
So localized alerts are pretty nice. You don't have to, alert everybody else, but there's something going on in a local area. There have been some downsides or controversies that come up, like the 2 a.m. loud alerts that you get for, what can you do while you're sleeping? They're addressing with those solutions what they can do, because there's also the problem of people who are wearing earbuds and that goes off. That is loud. State by state variations have inconsistencies. They haven't, addressed those. Doesn't seem to protect against abductors who are actively out to harm the child. So, we're not taking them elsewhere like a custodial. They're going to take them to a new location. They are going maybe revenge or something.
Yeah.
There's nothing to protect them.
Like, in other words, or also, if a child has been abducted and then Amber Alert goes out and the person who abducted the child sees this,
And
there's
panics.
nothing to panics, or they could panic and kill the kid or dump the kid faster than anticipated. So, like with any program or any kind of thing, there are the bugs and the things to work out. There are kinks in the system. Like any good gamer or programmer knows that there are updates and things to work out the bugs and stuff. Just like with a computer program, this had its growing pains, but they are at the group that's working on the Amber Alerts and all the other alerts is working diligently to make sure that they address all the concerns and try to figure out the best way to handle and resolve each and every one of them as they come up.
Yeah, but the overall, the Amber Alerts have a pretty good success rate. Over 1,200 successful rescues. The first use of the automated Amber Alert, once they set it, they were getting it all together, figuring it out, and they finally got a call in. And so this was the first one that went out. It was in first successful one. It was 1998. 8-month-old infant abducted by her babysitter. They sent the alert, and within 30 minutes, a guy called and said, "Hey, that car's right in front of me." Yay! That worked. That's the kind of thing they want to hear. They see people paying attention to stuff like that. Amber's little brother Ricky, now grown with his own daughter, born on Amber's birthday, like within the same hour, looks to the sky when he hears an alert, and he just thinks, "Go get him, sis." So that's pretty. That's pretty cool.
There are a lot of theories and things that have gone around, since Amber's disappearance and murder, and when you're dealing with a stranger case, it's hard to pinpoint what happened or who done it or things like that, because it is a stranger thing. You don't know where they were taken. You don't have a general crime scene. You don't have an area in which to really look. Like with Mara, we had her crash site and we searched out from there. This, we had, yes, her abduction site, but we didn't, and then her dump site, but it didn't leave a whole lot of room to as the who, what, when, where, or why. So it's the theories that have arisen are like some that like the transient theory, where somebody who was working at the Fort Worth stockyards. Like I said earlier, the stockyards are very famous here in Texas, and they continually have a year-round schedule of different activities, carnivals, rodeos, all kinds of things that happen that are there for just a couple of days, 2, 3, 4 days, and then they move on and something else comes in. So they thought, well, maybe it might have been a transient person who maybe knew the area, like with the rodeo, coming from the country family I come from. You do go travel to these rodeos, and it's the same rodeo every year in the same place, so you get a generalized feel of what the area is, or and around it, so you kind of get an idea of what's there. So it could have been somebody who was in the rodeo circuit, or somebody was there for a concert and went out and borrowed the truck from the event or something, and that's why they didn't find it when they did the search for it, because it wasn't registered to this county, to Tarrant County. So they could have been there, and they happened to be driving by and saw some kids playing, been there for a day or two prior and saw the kids playing there, and stopped and was stopping to see if they could kidnap somebody, a transient thing, and kept her in a trailer on site. And people were like, well, if she was in that, why did he take her into the rodeo? And I'm like, at that time, her story was so omnipresent, it was everywhere, that if he had taken her out, people would have nabbed it right away. They knew her facial expressions, they knew her body movements, they knew everything there was to know about Amber, and they would have immediately pinpointed. So it was too high profile, too dangerous to bring her out.
Yeah,
so
in a crowd like that, a little single little picture like that, you might not recognize them.
So it to not bring her, that he wouldn't have brought her out to save her, but he would have kept her in a place that nobody would have heard her because she wasn't restrained, because she didn't have any defensive marks. You know, part of me wonders if maybe she did know this person and wasn't expecting them to take her, and because she didn't have that and she was felt safe with them. I don't know. I mean, it's a possibility. You don't know. I mean, the police did thoroughly investigate everybody, but that doesn't mean that somebody didn't lie or didn't know more, or didn't take her on behalf of somebody else. The stranger may be the one who took her, and then took her eventually to somebody that she knew that was part of the family or a family friend. You never know. I mean, that's a possibility because it is a stranger abduction.
And scared her into being quiet and not.
And because it is a stranger abduction, doesn't mean that there's not a person involved that doesn't know the child. It also could have been, a situation where people are like, well, I've got, like myself, I have 3 brothers at home, and they've always were borrowing my mom and dad's vehicles all the time to go do whatever they need to do. And I'm sure people out there, we borrowed our pickup truck or something from a friend of ours or a family member or somebody.
Pick up something at the hardware store that was too big for the stand.
Or deliver something to somebody borrowing a pickup truck, or even running one. I mean, nowadays you can go to Home Depot or to these places and rent a pickup truck. Usually they have all the signs on there, but it didn't appear to be that type of vehicle. But he could have been an employee of a company and borrowed the pickup truck and was using it while he was in town. You never know. I mean, there's so many theories out there, and majority of them are plausible because we really don't know who did it. We do know, like I said earlier, that the police anticipate that he lived close by or within a certain distance, at least a mile or 2 from where the dump site is or was. But we don't know. I mean, he could have just been staying some close by. And that's the other thing, is that the area in which Amber was found, getting down to the creek level, wasn't easy. I mean, they had to go through the gate into the apartment complex, through another gate into a playground, and then through another gate down a hill down to the creek. And he's doing this all while carrying 80 pounds of dead weight. That's not easy. And this is during the late afternoon, early evening, in an apartment complex. And for him to do it quickly, efficiently, he had to be really a strong person, and he had to know the area. And there's just no way for him to do all that to get down there and not be seen. So, I mean, it pauses and it makes you think, who would have had access. And they do have, unfortunately it was a very grainy security footage. It was like, hello, the 1980s want their security footage back because it was so grainy and so hard to see. But they did see on the security footage a black pickup truck drive into the apartment complex not long before Amber was found. So they summarized that was the vehicle of the abductor, but unfortunately the footage was so grainy and so distorted that there was no way to clean it up, or at least not with the technology of the day. I know that they are working on trying to clear that video up at least a little bit. You maybe find some usage of it and maybe even see them leaving. But again, this was stormy weather. The camera was shaking all over the place, distorted, and it was also older security stuff. So, again, there are theories out there of what happened, who did it, and people summarizing, well, he had to be this, or he had to be that, or he lived nearby, or he was a transient, or, there's so many different possibilities and theories of what happened or who could have done this, and all of them are plausible. But unless somebody comes forward with a tip or whatnot, we may never have that answer. And January 13th, 2024, this year, marks the 28th anniversary of Amber's abduction and murder. And sadly, there still has been no killer found. The case remains very active and open, and the police are actively asking for tips and any information possible. And like I said earlier in our show here, that anything that you have, anything you might have seen, anybody, anything at all is a help. So doesn't matter how insignificant you think it might be, it could be perhaps the answer to solving this and bringing closure. So please, 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 again, I implore, and I will repeat this until doomsday. If you know anything, please call. The number is in the description below. Again, police think there are more people who know what happened, but are afraid to come forward because of either deportation, or they The police have said many times, you're not going to be deported. We just want information. If you do know something, please come forward. They even have Spanish-speaking translators, or any other. If you need a translator for a different language, they're more than happy to give it to you. You can call the tip line and you can give one anonymously. Again, you're not going to be deported. You're not going to, so you don't have to worry about that. Just please come forward with any information you may have if you saw something, especially if you were at the laundromat that day and you heard something. Even if you didn't see something, if you heard it, please, please, please contact. I can't say that enough. Um, you know, somebody knows something, and or they might have been terrified. And if you're away from, no longer terrified, and you feel safe again, but you're thinking, oh well, it's too long. It's not. They're still looking. So please just bring it. They knew that, and if it was your loved one or somebody that was close to you that might have partaked in this or did it, and that you're realizing, okay, it's better that we get this forward. Think of Amber, think of Amber's family. They have had to live with this for 28 years, not knowing who took their precious little girl from them. So please come forward, even if it is your mom, or excuse me, your dad, or uncle, or brother, or grandpa, or whatever. It might be that might put them into jail, but at least it's bringing closure and a reason why this little girl is no longer with us. And finally bring this case to a close. Police don't really have much to go on. They really don't. They got very few fibers from both Amber and from her bicycle and in the surrounding crime scene. In the sock, but a lot of it, unfortunately, Sally was washed away because of the rainstorm that had passed through. So a lot of DNA and material went missing or disappeared or was washed away. So they didn't have a lot. They do have a little bit of DNA, but they've been waiting for the DNA technology to catch up before using it, because once they use it, it's gone. And like a lot of people don't know, they're like, well, why didn't you use it? You can use it again. And I'm like, no, once they use it, they can only use it one time. Once it's done, once it's used, there's no
little tiny little bit of fibers and stuff it gets destroyed in the testing.
So
they give it, and you don't have any more to do.
Once it's done, once it's gone, it's gone. And so, but here it is now, 2024. We're in February of 2024, and police said they are very close to getting it tested. They're finally feeling that technology and DNA technology has come forward enough to be able to run it. But they did find a little. They know they have DNA, and they know hopefully that it will lead to her killer. And with the new genealogy, DNA genealogy thing, they're able to locate, if not the direct killer, at least a family member within the family's
right. And then they can search through there.
And they can search through there. So, they're getting close, and hopefully, within the next couple of years, we may have that answer. But police said that they will, even after 28 years, they've never given up hope. Even when they feel like they're going to lose hope, they still think of Amber and they think of her family and they keep going. The family still hasn't given up. But unfortunately, Glenda and Jimmy Whitston and Richard Hagerman all passed away, sadly, between 2007 and 2017, without ever knowing who took their precious granddaughter and daughter's life. But hopefully, we can all aid and help in finding closure for Donna and Ricky, who are remaining alive, and for the ones that are, for those who do believe, that are watching from above. We can give them at least a peace of mind to know what happened. But in the meantime, while the search continues for Amber's killer, the family continues to take solace in the legacy that Barbara and we spoke about earlier. That legacy being the Amber Alert, and by federal government's count, over 1,000+ children have been rescued and saved because of the Amber Alert. Glenda and Ricky and Donna have always stopped cold when they hear the Amber's name on the TV, the radio, on the alert, or even on the cell phones. She says, Glenda has said, or excuse me, Donna has said that her heart drops to her shoes. She says to us, I know what those parents and people are going through, because she went through it herself. Glenda, Amber's grandmother, calls the Amber Alert system the right legacy for her granddaughter. It feels good when some child is brought home and our baby has helped. Donna has said you just want to look up to the sky when she hears the Amber Alert and they've been rescued and say, you did it again, baby girl. But of course, sometimes it doesn't always turn out good. But the Amber Alert gives something more to go on from the very start, something more than what we had. The question's been asked, well, if we had the alert back when Amber was kidnapped, would have we saved her? We don't know. But, now we have it there. Now we have an ability to get the name of, the name of the child, what she looked like, what he looked like, the name of the person, or the image of the person who took them, and the vehicle out there quickly within a matter of seconds to minutes. You can get that out where people can see it and find it. I mean, the other day we had an Amber Alert here in Texas, and Barb and I were actually on one of our local highways going somewhere, and I happened to look up and I saw a number, and I looked at a car that was actually directly in front of me, and it looked like it was the exact same make and model of the car that was in the Amber Alert, and the license plate was one character off from what the license plate was. So you're like, oh my gosh, here it is. It was totally wild. So it's awesome to have this out there, and it gives us not only the police and authorities, but people in the public in general, something to go on, and to something out there to look. And Ricky has looked up to the sky, and and when he hears the alerts, like Barbara had said earlier, it's like, okay, time to go to work, sis. Let's go. Let's get this done. Pam Curry, who was a documentary producer, also documented the life of a happy little girl with a scrapbook full of awards for good grades and attendance, a child who loved creative writing and Barbie dolls, riding her pink bicycle, playing on the playground, hanging out with her little brother. And and today we watch those images across our screen, especially on every anniversary. So every January 13th here in Texas, most every news channel out there has a segment dedicated to Amber, and you see these moving images of this little girl whose life was tragically taken. And on these haunting images that we see is a little girl playing Ring Around the Rosie. We see her blowing birthday candles out on her birthday cake on her very last birthday. We see, a child being innocent and playing and being a normal child. Played on the news over and over again to help keep a memory of this little girl alive and with us forever. And then, of course, Amber's legacy is alive with the Amber Alert, which again has saved over 1,000+ children. And for a child who was always wanting to take care and help and take care of other children, I can't think of a better legacy for her. She wanted to help her brother, and she wanted to take care of other people to make sure that they're safe. And I literally, I have to agree with her grandmother. It is a perfect legacy for this sweet little girl, and it's the right one for her. So I hope the next time you out there hear an Amber Alert on your phone or on your computer, or on your gaming station, or see the sign lit up on the highways, that you'll look up to the sky and take a moment and just look up and say, go get him, Amber. Or if you hear that child was recovered, say, hey, you did it again. And just remember that this alert is more than just a missing child of the moment. It's it's another child's legacy, and it's one that we all should remember and hopefully help in one day, by keeping her story out there and by knowing her legacy, maybe one day it might help in finding closure for her family. We can only hope. I hope you enjoyed hearing the story of Amber and the wonderful legacy that she left behind. And again, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. See the little subscribe button down there? Click it, press it, comment, like, the thumbs up sign. Do all that stuff. And again, if you know anything about the abduction and murder of Amber Hagerman, please contact the proper authorities using the numbers that we have posted below in the description below. Just pop it open, read it. There's the numbers and stuff. Amber's legacy has given us so very much and has saved so many children over the years. Let's do something for her and help in bringing her killer to justice and finding closure for her family. That's something that we can do in honor and in thank you for all that Amber has done for us. So again, thank you, everybody. That's all we have for you today. Please stay safe and observant out there, and stay observant around you, your surroundings, the people you love and care about. And again, if you have any cases that and it's in your region of the world or country, that you'd like for us to take a look at, please send them our way. You never know, maybe perhaps could be help solve one of the cases we present to you. And also comment on there when you send them our way, if it's okay if we use your name or handle in the broadcast when we present that. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you again for watching us. Again, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until the next time, I'm Juliana.
I'm Barb.
Take care out there. Later.
Bye.